What's up? This is Rebel Radio.
What up, what up? This is DJ Newmark.
This is Peanut Butter Wolf.
It's your boy. It's okay.
Keep checking out Rebel Radio.
Rebel Radio.
This is Rebel Radio.
We're in the place right here. Rebel Radio is going down.
Would you say Rebel Radio?
Oh, wait. Let's do it again.
Rebel Radio.
What's up, Rebels? It's Rebel Radio. This is our newest installment in our Artwork Rebels series in partnership with Gorilla One. If you like this one, go back and check out our other Artwork Rebels interviews with Slick, Risk, Taz, and maybe some others. Good stuff in bringing lessons from the graffiti world straight to you. My guest today is Mike Delahaut, AKA Wise. He's not only a graffiti legend, but he's also a talented advertising creative, having worked on campaigns for Nike, Sprint. He did some work with us on the Scion campaign. And he's gonna tell us why, for him, graffiti and advertising are really just the same thing. And he's gonna give us some rules that have fueled his success. Number one, don't copy, stay original. And number two, just go for it and the opportunities will come to you. Mike Delahaut is also co-founder of the Delta Bravo Urban Exploration Project. That's really hard to say. He co-founded with Danny Boy from House of Pain, and their project is about finding iconic locations from culture, like the house where the Warriors was filmed back in Oklahoma, and scenes from music videos from Beastie Boys, Michael Jackson, Eazy-E, the list goes on. It's a really cool project. He's gonna tell us about that in our interview now.
You're gonna go out and command 200 people to come out for a shoot.
Sure.
You know, you got to get a client to buy off on that. And they want to kind of know you, you know? So, like, you can't just be that crazy person, like, you know, I'm going to go in here, guns ablaze. So,
yeah. No, that's cool. So, I've been excited to have you on because you have, like, this dual path that, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I have a really untraditional path.
But, it kind of goes back to what you were just saying, right? And so, we'll let Eddie jump in when he gets here. But, but you have this dual path of a ad creative and a graffiti artist, right? And you're talking about like starting at the bottom and kind of building.
Well, I mean, they both have the same. They're both the same thing in a weird way. They both,
How do you mean?
Graffiti has a direct link to, I think, advertising. I think you're just like kind of advertising yourself as a graffiti artist and stuff like that. And and of course, there's all those other elements of where the, historical perspective of what graffiti is. But again, it's really just marking your territory and looking for a better way to get up.
Yeah.
And I think that advertising, again, that career path for me was really just the same opportunity. It was like, oh, how, except for now there was a client involved and they were going to fund my quote unquote getting up.
Sure.
So, I always kind of looked at it that way. I always kind of looked at, because again, I'm a designer at heart. So I always looked at it as art, and whether it be typography or picking out a photo or, adjusting colors or whatever it was, it was always still an art form to me. It was always still design. It was like, because again, that was how, not only, that was like my educational process was, I went to art center, so they always kind of stressed your craft as like art. They wanted you, it wasn't a logo, it was a design. It was more than that. Typography was not, type in, your words and just lay it out. It was finessing it and really kind of, perfecting that craft. And I learned that, I guess, through graffiti in the early days too, because that's what that was. It was perfection of your craft. When you started, again, when I got into graffiti, it was, the mid to early 80s, and the whole, there wasn't a lot of people doing it. There might have been one book, Subway Art, at that time.
So take me back to that and even before that. Like, how'd you get into art and like,
I think I just always did it. And you know, I got to be honest. It's like I think that my dad and family always kind of just like encouraged me to do it. I think.
So you're painting and
you know, I think there's early signs of that stuff. Like your kid's always out in the garage opening paint or something. Maybe they have like a lot of pens and they're always trying to draw and stuff like that. I got into, you know, I think that there was always those roots in me, you know, so when how graffiti kind of developed into it was because I couldn't break dance. And, you know, a lot of people, you know, forget that, you know, graffiti has its roots in hip hop culture. And when I was coming up through it in those early days, it was based around hip hop culture more than it ever was now. Like now, there's zero connection to it at all.
Do you remember the first time like seeing graffiti or being exposed to it? Was there like, was there a...
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it, to tell you the truth, so like growing up, I grew up in Woodland Hills in the San Fernando Valley, and I grew up on the south side of Ventura Boulevard, and we were actually one of the first neighborhoods in the entire country to get cable television. So we got this thing called Z Channel. And Z Channel had art movies and art films and stuff. It wasn't necessarily like, back in these days, I'm going to date myself, it's like on TV and all this stuff. It's like those were the ones that kind of showed the more mainstream movies and things like that. But Z Channel had all these like artsy things, and a lot of it was coming out of like New York and stuff like that. And and you were able to see kind of, and again, not only was it Z Channel, I gotta say it was also MTV. So being one of those first neighborhoods in 1981, like I remember Rapture coming out. And that being, you know, again, this is like a precursor to rap, and you know, because again, it's before, you know, I started hearing like White Lines and things like that. So I heard like Rapture, and I remember seeing that video, and I remember seeing Basquiat and Lee and, you know, Fab Five Freddy in the video, and painting and stuff like that. And, you know, I always had a connection to that. Like the minute you saw it, it was like, wow, that's really fascinating that these people are writing their names really big. I like writing my name. You know, it's like, I think one thing leads to another. And during those influential years of your life, you know, you're always looking for some kind of, I don't know, something to latch onto, something that's original, something that's going to separate yourself from everything. So when hip hop culture came through, I think it was easy to latch onto that. And there was this outlet through it, which was art. And that was something that I was fond to. Again, like I wasn't really great at windmills, you know, or something like that, but my friends were. And because of it, I felt like, oh, I'll just be part of the team. I'll paint breaking or popping behind you, and you do your, you know, your shit, and we'll make it happen. And that was basically the way it kind of starts. And from that, again, you know, being in Los Angeles, being in a, you know, a really diverse part of the, you know, people forget about the San Fernando Valley, but it's really diverse, and there's you really are going to have a great mixture of like different people in your life, from people that are from the inner city. You know, it's like at, you know, Parkman, I was going to school with Ice Cube and stuff like that. So it was like you were basically connected to a lot of the city through the valley. But of course, you're just like this valley punk or something like that. But you were able to meet a lot of people, and the diversity was within hip hop at that time. So it was like, hey, I'm really into doing this art. Hey, I'm really interested in like what this new music form is coming out. And then, wow, these guys are magical as far as like whatever their dancing abilities. And then again, it being young and being like, you know, curious, that you're like, wow, let's, you know, that was a form of like social activity that was taking you over the hill to the inner city, which was something that I was fascinated about. So it was like always like getting on a bus and going, you know, to the other side of town, and then like being with your friends and whatever, they're like causing a breakdance fight or something like that, and, you know, the mall or something like that. But that was interesting to me.
Where'd you used to go when you came over into the city?
Westwood. Because I mean, at that point, Westwood was,
that was the thing.
I mean, I tell people this all the time. I'm like, Westwood was like the center of Los Angeles, you know, up until I guess, you know,
the riots.
Yeah, the riots and stuff. I was like, they used to have Mardi Gras, and we'd go to that every year, and it was like, you know, and we would do this at 12, 13, 14, you know, years old. So I don't know if kids even get out of the house that way anymore. Like they can't just walk down the street and get on the bus and go down there and basically like just show up back at home at night. You know what I mean? Like I don't think anyone ever knew that I was like going to the city or something like that.
You're like 20 miles away, 15 miles away.
Yeah. And it was basically, you know, you had a bus pass that the school provided you with, and you were like, I'm going for it. But again, that avenue is where you started to see on the buses more tagging, more. And as you drove through the city, you might discover the first, you know, signs of graffiti in the city. And that was fascinating, you know, because, again, graffiti wasn't something that, you know, was all over the internet and everyone was familiar with. It was very taboo, and it was very like, whoa, like that stuff from New York is out here. You know what I mean? It's like, so again, that stuff that you might have saw on, you know, a Blondie video, or I also remember seeing Style Wars. I remember seeing that, you know, it was like on PBS and stuff like that. But these were like, again, like not in the culture spectrum. They were like kind of like appearing on like, you know, public access or on educational television or in an odd music video that you might have seen from the city or from, you know, not the city, but MTV or whatever. But yeah, you would kind of take those bits and pieces, and slowly but surely, or not slowly, it really happened really fast. People started coming together because there was actually now a bunch of people that were like, oh, I want to tag, or I want to like write graffiti or something like that. So it actually took off, I think, around that point.
Do you remember your first piece?
Yeah, I mean, it was on a friend's wood wall in his backyard because, again, the first time you do it, you were basically, you know, stealing paint out of your dad's garage or, you know, your neighbor's garage. So you went and took, you know, flat black and some cherry red. Like you had no idea of colors or anything like that. And you had no idea of caps and nozzles and stuff like that. So, you know, there wasn't that starter kit that I think today's world basically has. It's like you can go down to any art store now and basically get a pre-packaged craft, you know, built graffiti set, you know what I mean, to go out and do your thing. But at those points, you didn't even know what was like spray paint. You just thought every spray paint was the same thing. And slowly but surely, again, you learn the process because you either met people or through trial and error. But yeah, the first piece I think said Poppin', and it was on wood, and it was basically because we had a linoleum mat in the backyard that you know everyone was breakdancing on.
It was like a wild style kind of piece.
It wasn't even a wild style. It was like bad bubble letters and like you know again you're like you're filling it in with like sparkles and I mean you know you were dreaming you could do Ramo or something like that, you know, but you weren't anywhere near close in those early days to like if you might have seen Subway art or something like that, like someone like Scene or Lee or, you know, Dondi, or Blade for that matter, like you were just in awe of that. And again, if you had the opportunity or you had a friend that maybe had been to New York and they had a picture or something, like it was so coveted to see one piece of graffiti, one tag, one train car. You didn't have the resources to go and just see the entire world of, you know, social media to follow like, oh, this is a letter style and stuff like that. But, you know, right off the bat, you started to learn the rules of graffiti really quick because as you went around, you were kind of critical and you're like, oh, that person's copying this or this person's doing that. So
give me what's an example of a rule?
Well, don't copy. I think originality. I mean, you know, biting is whack. You know what I mean? Like, I'm a big believer that originality is so much more important than your technical skills as far as like copying someone or that never impressed me as far as you know, someone just getting good because they followed someone. It was always those really innovative people that I drew myself to, or I tried to emulate or learn from or hang around, befriend, whatever it might be, you know, because again, it was like those were the people that I admired, and I always wanted to learn on that.
So how do you do that? Because it seems like it's such a, you know, basic human thing to copy something else you've seen, right?
Well, I mean,
like
there's just different people, I think, in life. You know, some people are more acceptable to copying. Right. You know, they don't.
But so for yourself, how do you develop that originality? Like, how did you create that?
I think you
style?
just, you know, again, because oftentimes it would come out of frustration of trying to copy someone else, that I would in turn to my inner self and draw something I wanted, or do it in a style that I wanted, rather than follow what was popular or what other people were doing. Because again, you wanted to, right off the bat, you wanted to do that New York style. You wanted to kind of create what you saw in a book or on film or whatever, but you needed to also figure out how your hand worked into it. And that applies to whether it's a tag or it's a graffiti piece or whatever. You know, certain people just have different hand skills. And so you need to kind of figure that out of like what your strategy is, or what your, how can I say it? It's like what you do best is basically what you should turn to. And if you embrace that, you're gonna probably find more originality in that than, again, trying to chase the tail, you know. And again, those are lessons that again apply all the way through, you know, my career and my experiences, you know, because again, that applies all the way through to advertising and design in itself. It's like you don't want to be considered a copycat, but there are people out there that have no problems with that whatsoever, you know, and that applies to the graffiti world too. And I think that that's probably more of the case of where graffiti is today in you know, because it's like I love it, and I, you know, embrace my peers and friends that are active in it, and I love the actual culture of it. I actually prefer the graffiti art side of it. I think that today it's like more just street art, and I think that it's become this more watered down, like again, less taboo, less provocative art form. But I can't stop that. You know, everything evolves in life. It's like, you know, street basketball in New York is now the NBA. Do I get mad about it? I don't, you know, I can't get mad about the progress, you know, because again, like that's part of my belief is that, you know, progress is good. And that's partially why I transitioned from graffiti to, you know, the commercial world, was that, you know, I didn't look at it as like selling out again. I looked at it as more of like getting up and using their you know, abilities to help me. So
when did that happen? Take us back to that decision. When did you decide art was a career?
You know, again, so during the graffiti, like, you know, movement here in Los Angeles, towards the late 90s or mid 90s, I guess. It would be the mid 90s or early 90s, because fashion lines started to come out that were being run by graffiti artists. Sure. You had Risky in here. I worked with him at Third Rail, and of course Eddie had a store, a very, you know, cutting edge store for the San Fernando Valley at that time. And it seems really funny to me now. I'm like, oh man, we're such like toys or something, but I'm like, it was so ahead of its time that now looking back on it, I have nothing but respect for the efforts made, and, you know, and for the truths behind it, because it's like, you know, at first you're like, oh, this is corny. Like, what are we going to get? A bunch of Tarzana kids hanging out here. And then I'm like, no, that's Eazy-E hanging out over there. Right. And Eddie will tell you his shooting dice stories over and over. But it was really like, again, it was special times then. And so at that moment, there was a lot of people, you know, were young, broke, kind of trying to be entrepreneurs. So the idea was to, we'll make T-shirts. Well, here I was, the artist and stuff. And again, through art, I was always trying to learn the commercial aspect of it. And so that really benefited me in the early days of it, because the T-shirt companies would say, hey, do you know how to even lay out a T-shirt? Now, back then no one had an Apple, you know, computer.
You couldn't drag and drop your
No,
artwork,
it was like you had to draw in a black and white reverse film positive and, cut the screens or you know, if someone was going to, you know, float you the $20, you were going to go down to some, you know, Hollywood facility and they were going to print you a film positive. But that was what the first steps were like, oh, you know how to do this? Oh, you can do this. We'll have you do the, you know, logos for the T-shirt and stuff like that. And and it just kind of, I guess, progressed out of that. So it was kind of, again, it was natural and it was organic, and it just seemed like something that everyone was doing. But yeah, it just transitioned into doing designs. And from those designs, then you meet another person, you meet another person, you meet another person.
So why, you know, some of the folks we've had on, you know, we had Risk on, we had Taz on, like, you know, obviously Taz's background is a little bit different, but, you know, people chose different paths, right, as ways of getting up, of exploring their art, whether it was going on to clothing or whatever. So for you, why advertising?
I wasn't really trying to get into advertising. I wanted to get into design, and so I studied design and packaging at Art Center, and again, just being a background of graffiti, like I always had a fascination to live in New York. So when I graduated Art Center, I just packed up and sold everything and moved to New York, and didn't have a friend, didn't have anything like really out there. Yeah. And I had a friend. I had a friend that went to Art Center, and she was going to take a vacation. And of course, I'm like sleeping on a floor, like on cardboard. And she was like, do you want to, you know, freelance? I'm over at Wyden and Kennedy. And she said, come on in. And I said, all right, great. You know, I need a job right now. So I went in there and never left. Like literally did not leave for 4 years. Like they like hired me, gave me a shot. And so that path, and if you don't know like the background of Wyden and Kennedy, it's like Nike and ESPN. And they were a new office in New York. They of course had their Portland office, and that's where they were doing all their legendary work. And like here I was, like this, you know, fresh off the boat student out of Art Center in New York without a job, like barely living. And here was the, you know, best agency in the world, basically. And they were like, hey, we'll give you a job. And I think that path right there, because I went with them, that I chose advertising. Yeah. Because I saw a company that had like these like, you know, incredible. The talent there was like unbelievable. And then the work was unbelievable. And they were doing advertising. And I was like, wow, this isn't what I envisioned as advertising. Because again, when I first got there, it was like all the legends were still working at Wyden at that time. So I worked under this guy, Stacy Wall, who's like a major director now. And I had a design director named Laura Ford, and they were so like cool, and like they embraced culture, and they like knew everything about whether it was graffiti or it was like, you know, whatever. It was a director or music, whatever it might be, a great film. They were just so well-rounded that I was like, oh, I'm in love with this. I love this environment. I could do this. And I think that was, you know, a very fortunate thing that happened to me, just because, you know, don't move to New York without a job.
Sure.
And, you know, you never know where you're going to end up in your path, you know. So to have that opportunity that was my right out of college opportunity.
That's amazing.
Yeah, because, I mean, now being in the business for 20 years, like, people are always like, dude, how did you get a job at Wine & Kennedy? I was like, I don't know. Like, but to tell you the truth, they came back and said, you know, we hired you because you were like a graffiti artist. You know what I mean? Like, and so.
Yeah, that's what I want to know is, like, you know, especially back at that time, like, do those worlds come together, or you kind of live in this double life where you're.
It's a double life at that point, because
at
that point you weren't seeing graffiti artists doing major campaigns.
Right.
But in order, or like, you know, I got to give credit to Wyden, was like, they had that vision. Mm-hmm. So they kind of looked as like, oh, perfect timing for this kid coming through here. We want to head this direction. And the creative directors, because again, creative directors don't do the work. They oversee the work. They guide the ship. Mm-hmm. So they're looking to build teams that are, you know, culturally in the know or connected. And, you know, if I was to have ended up at, I don't know, whatever big agency, you know, Saatchi & Saatchi or something, you know, or even a Deutsch at that time, they had no vision to go that way because their clients are different. They're selling chicken or, you know, fast food or something like that. They're not selling Nike, which was culture driven, you know, all the way through. So when you know, they wanted to go that route. The creative director, you know, and I'll give a lot of that to Stacey Wallace. Like, he was crazy that way. He wanted major campaigns done by graffiti writers. And he knew that he was never going to, well, he could, but they had the vision to know that if they didn't enlist graffiti writers or people within that community, they weren't going to break through the right way. Right. And they weren't going to get the artists that Nike was going to demand, which was, you know, I could say, like, you know, we worked with KR and we worked with Scene and we worked with Caves. And these were the first generations of these graffiti writers doing, you know, commercial work. And so they had the foresight to kind of see that they wanted to go after those people that were going to bring them legitimacy within that community, and they weren't going to go around the side door to do it. They weren't going to. They were not an agency that was like, well, we'll just fake it. Right. You know, that was never ever like a topic at Wyden & Kennedy. Like, you just don't fake stuff. So with that, I think that, you know, again, that was all part of that perfect spirit where I was like, wow, they like me for doing graffiti. You know, I came out there with like an art center, like portfolio, all like corporate on blackboard, 15 by 20. You know what I mean? Like, look at my logos and this and that. And like, I did layouts and stuff. And they were like, that's really lame. Like, can you break out those like 300 graffiti books over there? Like, and oh my God, this is so cool. Like, you know, so again, that was so refreshing. And here it was, like, those were the people, like, I was like in awe because, I mean.
So extract that for a minute. Like, if you were talking to kids coming out of school who may not necessarily be graffiti artists, right? But how do you apply that? What's the lesson there for the rest of
I think
us?
it's like, be yourself and you're going to get an opportunity. You know, because again, your first day in there, you're a coffee guy. Right. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, this guy, he might, you know, say, hey, that guy does graffiti. Like, let him do this campaign or something. Like, you need things that are going to separate you from the rest. And if you can, again, apply yourself, whether it's like, I like cooking or, you know, I'm into car racing or something, I don't know, you know, or fashion or something like that. And I think those are the things, because you're going to have to be multi-skilled in all aspects of life. So when you can bring in your own 2 cents and your own, like, kind of, you know, your upbringing and your background, your past, you can help, again, the creative directors are driving a ship. So they're looking for people that might have the avenue to some like, oh, there's a street culture project coming through. Let Mike do it. Yeah. And that's what you're looking for because, again, you're looking for ways to separate yourself from the rest and also opportunity. But again, like one of the, you might end up at a big agency or something like that, and you're going to have to fight your way through 600 people. I got really fortunate in the sense of Wyden because they were a brand new office and there was 13 people in there. Wow. And those are including account directors. And so there was literally like no one there to like do anything. So you had to.
And that's a good point. Like, I don't know that you could have predicted that,
Never.
Coming out of school that, I'm that's going to be the perfect place. But at the same time, I think, especially young people, but probably most people don't pay enough attention to what is the culture that I'm walking into, right? Is this going to be the right thing for me?
Well, again, it's a culture-driven business. So, like, the more you know about anything, you're going to really help them.
Well, I know, like, so we met through the Scion work, right, years ago. And that was a huge project in terms of its investment in street culture. And so, I'll say, like, we started getting people who wanted to come work for us because they wanted to do that work.
Absolutely.
Which is cool, but, they weren't always necessarily the right people for us. You know what I mean? Like they kind of didn't care about us as an agency. They cared about, I want to be on that piece of business.
Well, that's
sort of it's the wrong reasons, right, to have that relationship.
Yeah, well, I mean, because I've seen people turn, Old Spice into a culture brand, you know what I mean? Right. Like, so, and become extremely successful because of it. So, that's one of the great lessons is that every opportunity can be an opportunity. You want to go after Nike because you say, oh, they're the best or at culture, but really anyone can be that. And I will say this, it's like Scion was a great example and a great lesson of a company coming into the game and embracing culture properly. They surrounded themselves with the talent, and they put people in place that would, again, a lot of stuff is about dot connectors. I always talk about these people like there's always this like one person in the middle that connects the two to make it happen. And Scion was a great example of that, or a great case study of people that knew people within the community, went and got like the best artists and the most up and coming ones, and really embrace that because they were how do you say, they benefited greatly because they were able to take that new social media platform, and they had all these incredible artists and talents with it. And it wasn't just artists, it was music and everything. And that platform gave them all these hits, and all this awareness because, again, it was rooted within the community, and that is authenticity, which makes their brand go so much further. Like, they had an agenda. They had to sell cars, you know what I mean? But they didn't force it down, someone's throat, or they did it they did it within the community. They didn't overly scrub the talent, because they were really cool with letting in, talent that maybe another brand might not be okay with, at the end of the day. I mean, I've dealt with that a bunch of times.
Of course.
But that they did things right, and they benefited because of it. But that's why I would say, like, you guys were getting calls just to be on the Scion team because people want that in their book. They want to be, look, at the end of the day, you don't want to sell toothpaste. It's not going to be fun. You know what I mean? It's not rewarding, and especially if you're young and you want to be on the culture brands. Because that's what you see in front of you, and you're like, oh, I want to do great work, but you don't really know if that brand is gonna change on you. And,
of course.
And we were talking earlier just a little bit about the Dr. Pepper 7-Up thing and EDM, and I think that is a great example of like, you might get assigned to some, soda pop or some, and you're like, I don't really believe in that all the way, but you might find opportunities within it to do really great stuff or work with great artists and great musicians and things like that. And at the end of the day, like, that's what really matters to me. Like, again, creating art, through their avenues of, their corporate goals and stuff aside. It's always great to have that ability to put your work out there and to, help push a culture further.
So what do you think? I mean, you've been part of, the Scion work that we did and the, Nike obviously, and you've seen these things up close. What's been the best brand use of graffiti specifically?
Nike's always going to be the ones that are going to separate themselves, because they always had they let graffiti artists do shoes. And again, they have partnerships with the most, again, the idea of selling out is like somehow lost when it comes to doing a Nike product. If you were to endorse a coffee cup, you'd get ridiculed, so bad within any community. But for some reason, Nike has always had this great relationship with the community. But I think, again, that goes back to their trust, their belief. They have the last independent agency in the entire world with White and Kennedy, owned by two humans, not a New York board of directors. They have a flawless machine when it comes to like what their brand represented to not only people and athletics, but also, again, to culture and to art and to and their belief from the top down that they always encourage people to, again, not fake it, but to do the right thing, to do the best work possible, because you shouldn't put that swoosh on anything, and that isn't legit. So again, like, I think that they probably have embraced it the most, but I've also done work with Sprint, you know what I mean, big corporate clients, or even Dr. Pepper, where we've been able to work with the best again, artists in the community. And again, that's not only just a testament to a great client, but also to great artists and artists that are they're willing to work, and we find ways to basically work around their desires, because some of them are like, hey, I don't want to be that far out there with this, or I want to keep kind of my legitimacy. But there are great brands out there, but I think that it comes down to having great people in the middle, and that that's not a tout to myself, that's a tout to clients and creatives and stuff like that recognize that and strive for that and push for that. So is there great graffiti work within brands? Yeah, across the board. I think, I've seen incredible work, at every level. I just think, again, that it's best when when the clients come to you and respect the work in a way that they recognize that the community can attack them back. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
sure.
if you don't respect the community and you don't respect the work, you're not going to get the benefit of it. And if you want that benefit, which is what I was saying, what Scion really got out of it, is that social aspect of it, because every bit of advertising or design or whatever, must live in a social environment now. Yeah. And if it, there's no buffers on that, so if you don't do it legitimately, if you don't do it well, if you don't respect the artists, if you don't follow through on all the things, you will get a worse result than if you didn't do it at all. So it's kind of one of those, I always, whenever a brief comes across my desk, like, because again, all my work doesn't really reflect graffiti, but when it does have a street art element or something, or a culture-driven element, I'm on eggshells, because I have a reputation. I have to represent myself and also my peers and friends, and I also don't want to step on any of the artists' reputations and stuff like that, because they need a representative in that room for them too. Because if you knew how things worked to get, when you see a billboard or you see a television commercial or you see an activation, you know what I mean? Like whatever it could be. There's so many cooks in that kitchen, and you have to go through so many levels, and you have to take it up to people that they have no clue what you're talking about, because they're going to be they're writing the check, what I mean? So if you need $1 million to do something, which is, not a lot of money, but it's a lot of money in this business. Sure. And they will not give it to you just like people think, like the corporate world is like, oh, we're just throwing money around or something like that. I'm like, I have to prove everything. Yeah. And if you could see, what goes into just doing a graffiti mural or something, and the background arguments and the closed door sessions, you know what I mean? And also the weird vetting, you know what I mean? Like, I've heard it all about graffiti writers or even any artist or photographer or you can get a movie star, and it's a really dirty, dark table conversation about like, can we trust that person, blah, blah, blah. And so you have to have people on board that can basically, we're joined by a good friend here, Eddie Donaldson. You have to have people on board that can basically fight that good fight for you all the way through, or projects don't happen, right? And you don't get money and nothing ever. So when you see something out there, I definitely respect all of it, because I know how hard it is to basically get 1 cent out of a client to do anything. So
absolutely. Well, welcome, Eddie Donaldson.
What I miss?
Nothing, not a bit.
Yeah, we're done. Glad you made it.
That was the train.
Sorry, guys, just woke up.
That's all right.
All good.
We're sorry to get you out of bed.
Yeah, not me.
That's basically it. It's like, again,
that's great stuff, man. So I want to talk a little bit about what you're doing now, and Eddie was telling me a little bit about Delta Bravo.
Yeah.
So give us what's going on with that. And
Delta Bravo, it's like it was something started by Danny O'Connor, and if Danny O'Connor is Danny Boy from the rap group House of Pain. I guess he was on tour one tour, I guess, and was stuck in Tulsa, and said, "Oh, I'm gonna go. I'm bored." So he figured what happened in Tulsa and looked up, and sure enough, the movie The Outsiders was made there, and that's one of his favorite movies and stuff like that. So I guess he went to the house and came home and was fanatical about like, I want to find locations or something like that, and those locations ended up evolving into more like pop culture references and anything that we could basically find. Well, one thing led to another, and I've known Danny for 35 years now, so I think like I saw him post some stuff on social media, and I was like, hey, I know some cool stuff, let's go out there, and really it just formed a camaraderie of like going out and doing stuff. It was like we would, we become these like, buried ourselves in screens, and we spend Sundays like checking our social pages or something like that. And it was kind of one of those things like, hey, let's get out of the house, let's go do something, let's go find something. And one thing led to another, and it's now evolved into like this whole like, global brand of people that are out there trying to find stuff for him. And I think that the platform of him, because he had he's a rap star and he's a celebrity in his own right, he had the ability to kind of get it out there, and people were like, again, the same phenomenon, like, hey, I like what you're doing, I like to do that, I'm over here, I could go do Clockwork Orange stuff. I'm in London or something like that. You know, it's like it grew really fast, and
it's pretty cool.
And it became some fun. Again, it was like.
And what is the output? Is there products?
I mean, yeah, like we will do stupid things like that, but you know, really the output now is like where. So out of that first experience, I'll tell you the story. It's like, so Danny went back and bought the Outsider's house.
Oh, cool.
And so now in Tulsa. In fact, he's out there right now, and they're rebuilding the front stoop and everything like that. Yeah. And 2 weeks ago we had C. Thomas Howell and Darren Dalton and a lot of the guys from S.E. Hinton was there, and they're all part of this big fundraiser to rebuild that house in Tulsa, and I think it's just a wonderful thing. It's like one of those things, like what started out as just some offbeat passion and like kind of cruising around. I think it was cool because Danny took it full circle and went back to its roots and went back and purchased the house and is now rebuilding it, and it's going to become a museum and stuff like that. And a big shout out to like Zachary Matthews and Donnie Rich and those guys that are all out there, like the real team that's out there like 24 hours a day, rebuilding it. So what started again is like this novelty Facebook social page, has gone full circle to where when I was out there 2 weeks ago, I saw an entire city and community like in tears, and like
really,
it is the most unbelievable thing I've ever.
I don't mean it like that. I'm just saying.
I know. I mean, there are people. Excited. There are people driving. The Outsider's house. Like I talked to Danny and Zach about this. It's like it kind of is a little bit bigger than just some like weird movie location. It kind of has a bit of like that Field of Dreams. There's a guy who owns that field out in Iowa or whatever, and then there's a guy who bought like a Christmas Story house in Cleveland. Oh, wow. And these become like destinations of that are far bigger than what you envision, and the Outsiders has that, because the Outsiders is about brotherhood, and it's about the other side of the tracks, and it's about seeing things the same way. The whole idea that it's the same sunset in Beverly Hills that we see in East Los. You know what I mean? So it's like it's this it's a beautiful story, and then that story is the second most read story by any youth group ever. It's the number 2 to Charlotte's Web. So it's been read by every kid in school. They know the story. In fact, the movie itself was only made because a elementary school in Fresno, the teacher and the students all wrote a personal letter to Francis Ford Coppola and asked him to make this movie.
You're kidding.
And Francis Ford Coppola said, I'm going to make this movie. They didn't even go to S.C. Hinton, who wrote the story, but it's so much bigger than that. And so when I got out there and I started seeing like, people were driving up from North Carolina and all, and people are crying, and it was like, oh my gosh, this is like bigger than this isn't about a movie. What I mean? This is about S.E. Hinton's novel, The Outsiders, and The Outsiders really appeals to us because people are either the socias or the greasers, and at the end of the day, everyone knows who those two sides are because that's what we are. We've all been in that group. So it became such a bigger thing, and here it is. It's gone full circle from, finding pop culture locations and doing whatever to, testament to Danny and Zach and all those guys out there to taking something that was, really slated for demolition. This house, it was about to get lost, but saving it and giving it back to the community in the city of Tulsa. And I've never seen anything like it. I mean, the mayor was there. You know what I mean? It's like it's always on the news. They put up street signs on the corner, Curtis Brother Way, and the Outsider's house. It's like it changed people's lives. And when I went into that neighborhood, the community, it's very poor. You know, I mean, it's
Sure.
Even when they made it, it was a very bad area, and no one in these like big city like places could ever understand like what poverty and
small town,
just life in middle America is like, and when you get there, you really realize it's like, wow, this is really great for a whole group of people, and what's going on here is like far bigger than like, oh, let's, I love this movie, I'm going to save the house.
Right.
And it's like, wow, this is, this could change lives in the sense of, it could become a destination, or maybe just that neighborhood becomes like hip. I don't know. Yeah. And all of a sudden, everyone who had these like ramshackle houses is like,
property value
like
increases.
the hipsters
buying Bentleys or something, because they were like, wow, who would have thought the thing across the street? And, that's something that we've learned through the whole Delta Bravo experience is like, one man's trash is another man's treasure. But there's so many things, especially in Los Angeles, that are just unbelievable pop culture. Like,
oh yeah,
like,
well, I mean, I saw on the Instagram page, it was like,
it's unbelievable. I mean, the layers of it. So, what some person's like, oh, I'm going to tear that down. I'm like, nah, that's the Beastie Boys pool. Like, you know what I mean? So that's
cool.
How can I say? It's like, there's like value in this stuff. 'Cause like, I'm like, there's like a wall in East LA where, Michael Jackson did Thriller in front of, it's literally in a hellhole. I'm sitting here going like, dude, we could disassemble all these bricks. You know what I mean? Like, they're Michael Jackson fans. Like, we'd walk away with like $20 million. But like that dude at the place is like, if you want to tear down the wall, cool. And I don't want to be like, saying like you're trying to be money making on all this, but there are things out there that you're just shocked that people might destroy. There's a house out in Los Feliz right now, Craftsman, investor groups coming in there. They're going to tear it down, build a high rise whatever apartments on it or whatever. But it's Walt Disney's first house. You know what I mean? Wow. And that's where he first came out and spent the time. He drew the first cartoon sketches back there and everything.
That's cool.
And you sit there and you're like, wow, you want to tear that down? Like, do you not see the value in that? And I've seen in the past, I've been a part of their crew for a couple years now. I've seen so many things like vanish because they tore it down. And it's shocking, whether it's, Marilyn Monroe's house was just tore down in Van Nuys. I would rather live in Marilyn Monroe's house. You know what I mean? And that's what, that's what I think the Outsiders house thing really brought too, because here was a house in a neighborhood, it probably was $200, $300 rent per month. You know what I mean? And I'm sitting here going, God, people on Airbnb would like pay $500 to sleep in Pony Boy's room. You know what I mean? Like, you could do that every night. But these people were sitting there like barely getting by, and I'm like, and it's you wonder why people again don't embrace history. There's such incredible history. There's an incredible shack in Pasadena, or a wood shed behind in an alley. And that's where Van Halen started. Oh, wow. And it's like the shed's still there. Yeah. And so you can go up and kick it right next to it. And I'm like, do you know what started in that shed? Like, it's almost like ghosts that come out of these places because, again, if you enjoy that stuff, if you like enjoy history, or if you, again, as you get older, I think, you see the, it's like the Beastie Boys or something like that. It's like, they're not around anymore. So like now you really appreciate it. Now you sit there and look and go, oh man, that's where they shot the video or something. It's like, so you want to go over there, hang out, you kind of feel the spirits, give a little shout out to MCA, and you go on your way. But it's magical to me because you know these locations like the celebrities they are themselves. We've often said like the location is a star in itself. So if it's there's a great one of, Danny in a drone going into the Fast Times pool in West Hills, you know what I mean? Cool. But,
to
those people, they just see it as a house, and well, those people actually know what they have, and like if you search it on Google, it'll actually throw you down the street and stuff. So they're definitely like anti, quit coming over to my pool, but to me, I'm like, dude, I'd pay you $1,000 to go in that pool and like have a pool party, because I'm like, that's where Phoebe Cates got out. In fact, I'd like to go into Brad's bathroom, but not with Eddie. But
so are you still doing art too?
Yeah, I mean, I always still do art. I don't think you'll ever stop doing art. I think that you always, look for that outlet, whether it's a canvas or and you'll do whatever. I do a lot of, one of the things that I've been working on is like I've been packaging experiences, and I've been doing this for probably like over 10 years, and they're all in plexiglass boxes.
So what does that mean?
Well, I basically, like, wherever I've gone, I've just like collected stuff, and I've turned it into like a product that's always in this uniform box.
Oh, cool.
And there's literally like hundreds of them, and I can have everything from, one can just be spray paint, nozzles, but another one can be like, decks of cards and, things from Vegas and all this stuff. And they all are perfectly packaged in this stuff. And I'm kind of like, I'm looking at it as kind of like a maybe down the road, like it's like a piece that you could kind of look back at your life on and see all the experiences, because it's like weird. It's like I've got like, say like a Vegas one, or even like I have a Taipei boxes and Tokyo boxes, and inside of it might be like ketchup from room service and stuff. And it's funny because it's like they're getting old and like they're changing colors and stuff. And
is that is that stuff for sale?
I mean, eventually maybe it's for sale, but I look at it as more of like I want to do a show where it's like literally like a grocery store, because they're all packaged, they all have labels, like they all look uniform, like packaging, because again, that's a reflection of me and advertising and design and packaging.
It's kind of like the Christmas gifts.
Those are part of it, and those are part of the series, but it's through 10 years, it's really interesting to look at now, at least from my point of view, because I see all my stories in them, and there's a lot, and I think it'll be really interesting to look back at, maybe after I'm gone, and something that you can say, wow, look at all these
different... fighting over boxes at your house?
Maybe, you know what I mean, but I mean, it's
on a few.
That's funny.
It's just something, again, that, again, art's not just, painting, art's not just, writing your name or using spray paint. It's whatever you want to do with it. So if you want to, try something or push your idea some other way, I'm all encouraging for it. Because again, back to, my original point, it's like, it's all about originality and trying to do something that's new and innovative. And I've always, again, I've always respected my peers and friends that have always tried to do something new and innovative. And, and excuse me, because I think those are where you'll get the greatest results. Again, because it's like, looking at street art now, or looking at, the graffiti world again, it's like, I don't even look, because it just seems like the same thing over and over and over and over and over. And I love that people are doing it. I think it's great, but it's not going to draw me to, like, again, get on a bus and, go all the way out there and take pictures or something. But
sure.
But it's still awesome, and I think that it's great that people do it and things, but it's not as exciting, or, so again, if you're out there doing stuff, just keep pushing your originality, because that's what we're seeing people become very successful at. And so, if you're out there trying to, make your name with that kind of a movement or something like that, look at yourself, be yourself. You'll find your own avenues, and you'll probably be like great, because again, you're original, and someone will catch on to it, and you'll be a phenomenon, like a Space Invader or something like that, where I'm just, I mean, he's a prime example of that, where I'm just like, the guy was like, I don't really care about, I don't want to do spray paint or something like that, but I'm gonna walk around with a bunch of glue and tiles and make an 80s, 8-bit character everywhere in the world. And sure enough, like, phenomenon, because those are, again, like, those are strategies based on, I think, what Shepard said, where, it was like, I'll go right into your community and I'm going to do something different. I'm going to do wheat pasting or something like that. But again, like people are such followers now that, you know, then wheat pasting becomes like, I'm going to do wheat pasting or half of the, if I drive around the city now, like half of the things have some like Banksy like message. I'm like, guys, it's, you know, you're not that guy, you know what I mean? But it was cool when he did it, you know what I mean? And it was really innovative. So again, embrace the originality of things and go for it. Like, you know, that's one thing, you know, sitting next to this guy here, Eddie, you know, he's a prime example of someone that went for it. And I tell people to do that more and more because that's what's going to hold you up in life is that you're not going to go for it. And the people that I know that have been very successful in life just went for it. Like whether it's, you know, I mean, that's the way the seventh letter started. You know what I mean? It was like, Casey, I'm going for it. You know what I mean? Like it was not no planned, you know, thing, you know, and when I always tell people, I go, the first show we did outside of the Reebok show that Tall did was a show called like Street Dreams, I think, up at Ghetto Gloss in Silver Lake.
Yeah, we did it with Red Bull helped sponsor that one.
But I mean,
Ron English was
there
on
was
that was
it
a good
was
show.
the only people that showed up were Seventh Letter and like their girlfriends and friends. Like no one gave a damn. You know what I mean? And you know, here it is. Like I see people, you know, lined up for Kanye or something from the store or something. It's like
that show was actually kind of crowded, if you remember.
It was
for
because there
what we
was
were doing at the time,
there was
that shit
20
was
of
crowded.
us that all brought 4 friends in a ramshackle. I mean,
Pretty crowded.
It's like a bottom of an old house converted, you know, Ghetto Gloss.
All right, can we do a little lightning round? I have we're almost out of time, but I got some questions for you. So if you could give one piece of advice to your 18-year-old self, what would you tell him?
Go for it. And don't change what you know, again, that was the mentality I had going to New York.
Yeah.
And that was the best thing I ever did. Yeah. Because again, I had nothing and I had no friends and everyone was out here and I was an LA guy.
Yeah.
But, you know, do it. You're young at 18. You're not, you have so much time to come back home. Like you can go spend there 10 years, come back. Everyone's doing the same thing.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So go for it. You know,
Eddie, we haven't tried that question out on you, but what do you got? What would you tell 18-year-old Eddie?
Slow down. Just a little bit.
I would tell him that too, by the way.
Yeah, slow down just a little bit. I mean, I went for it, that's for damn sure. But
for sure.
I just, you know, I think when you're 18, when you're young, some of the choices you make can stick with you. Yeah. So
don't live with Adam Rich.
Yeah. That was fun.
What's something you used to believe that you then decided you'd been wrong?
That LA wasn't it. You know, that was a big part of like going to New York and also my peers weren't it. Like, because again, I'm being like really honest here in the sense that like, you know, I never believed that we were gonna do things. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think you have that confidence at a young age to like believe that you can do the Jordan type face. I mean, like that's things that you're gonna have opportunities to do. Yeah. But when you're young, you know, you're at home. It's the typical teenage angst. Mm-hmm. You know, you're not that confident in the belief that like the friends around you are going to be like, because I mean, I would always say like, oh man, that's great. Like we all do graffiti, but I mean, we ain't seen in PJ, you know what I mean? 25 years later, my peers and friends within the seventh letter are maybe more important than seen in PJ, you know what I mean? And I have to give it to them because, you know, it's them that really went out there and did that work. Yeah. Because there's no easy way to that kind of level of respect or, you know, when I think of a Saber or something like that, like, and I know all the tough stuff that he's been through, you know, and he's a legend in that community. Like, I mean, kids are like crazy over him. Yeah. I got to give it to him because, you know, I was like, well, you're from Thousand Oaks, bro. Like, you can't, you know, this ain't the Bronx. You know what I mean? Like, we could never be anything.
Right.
So that would be the one thing that I would say that
that's good.
That the people around me were incredible.
What talent have you always wished you had more of?
Oh, geez, breakdancing. No, I mean, in reality, it's like I would rather have been an architect.
Is that right?
Life. Oh yeah, because again, it's like.
Some Mike Brady shit?
No, not Mike Brady shit. More like, you know, I Am Pei and, you know, like, you know, big time, you know, Frank Gehry kind of stuff. Because, again, it's like one of the great regrets of advertising is the amount of work that you put into it, or even design. The amount of work you put into it to see someone shit on it, lost, throw it away. It's disposable. You know?
I bet there's a lot of that in architecture, too, I imagine.
Yeah, but it's like when you build a 90-story, 80-story building downtown, and I'm right at my window, they're building the new, you know, Korean Air Tower or whatever that is. It's like that's gonna be here for 1,000 years. You know what I mean? And like that guy's art and that design and all that effort is like something that someone will look at and respect so long from now. And advertising is so not that. Like, I mean, I remember, you know, I'll just add this one story. It's like when I first got to New York, I remember laying out something like Derek Jeter ad for Nike, and it was in the New York Post, and, you know, here I am taking the train back home, you know, and I'm like watching the dude, and he's like got his New York Post, and like, I'm like, damn, he's going to open it right to my ad right now. And he goes, and like flipped it right to the next page. And I was like, and it was like, you just felt all the arguments, all the battles, all the time you spent in there, you know, waiting for the film to come back. Oh, let's retouch this, blah, blah, blah. And I literally saw the dude go, fum, 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 fum. And, you know, and that's the way you feel when if you knew how much was in a television commercial, and then when I see someone, you know, turn it, or, you know, we're also in we're in digital recording day. We don't even stop on that stuff. Like, if you knew like how much blood, sweat, and tears go into that, like you would sit there and say, I don't ever want to do that again. Right. So I think that's why I've leaned towards architecture, where I'm like, dude, I wish I would have made a 80-story building, because that was never coming down, you know.
Sure.
Permanent.
Yeah. What's a goal you'd still like to accomplish?
I really like what's going on, again, like with the Delta Bravo thing. And I would love to see, you know, one of the things I'd like to add to this is that I would love to see those two, like my corporate world, come along and change what is advertising. And I would love to be a part of that and be a part of some bigger projects that start to shift the wave from what is traditional advertising, which I think is just a waste of time. Again, like no one's ever been motivated to buy anything from a television commercial or a print ad or whatever. But I would love to see a movement where, let's say, the corporate community found those kinds of projects that are truly beneficial to communities and people, and that they align themselves with it. Because, say, like an Anheuser-Busch or something, who has billions every year at their disposal, could easily put a couple $100,000 into a project like this, and the results would be far greater than even their first class tickets that their execs fly around on. You know what I mean? Right. It's like we could, and I say that in the sense of like, we spend so much money on the wasteful stuff that I would love to see the advertising community do things that were more influential and more, again, about community and about grassroots marketing, because marketing is something that really works better when one of your friends or peers tells you about it. Because if you see it on TV or if you see it anywhere else, it has zero effect to you. But when your friend's wearing a pair of, Chuck Taylors or something, you're more inclined to go, God, I dig your shoes. I'm going to pick up a pair. And because 100%. You trust your friends and you trust your peers. So I would love to see the advertising community, marketing, design in general, embrace better projects and embrace less of the clutter and more of the results. Because that was one thing that I don't know how to quantify in advertising was, were we changing the needle? Were we selling anything?
Right.
And the only way I ever really believed that we were was when people said, oh, I like the product, or I like what you're doing, or I like the initiative, or whatever it might be. I think that is something that if I could go away from this business with helping to influence one thing, it would be that, you know, because I feel like just the initial startup of, like, again, back to the Wyden days of, like, them embracing someone that might have brought maybe not the traditional artist to the table or photographer or whatever. It was that kind of a belief and that kind of a challenging of the system to say, well, I'm not going to use those 10 photographers.
Sure.
I'm going to use this skateboard photographer. That is how to do it. And so I would love to see, again, more of a corporate initiative towards better projects, better things that people can believe in and rally around. I think that's great. I think it's a big part of you know, why people dump on the country and stuff like that all the time, is that we are overstimulated by, like, you know, the corporate side of things and whatever it might be, and that if they were to do a better job at you know, again, building their names within the right way rather than the wrong way, I think that would be great.
Well, I mean, look at the political race. If that's not the biggest joke in the world, I can't believe it. You look at the HBO show or whatever. The name of it. What's the name of the show that's on HBO?
Veep?
No, the one that's the recap on the race.
The Last Week Tonight?
No, I don't know what it's called, but they're basically clowning.
Oh, really?
The election. You know, it's like
I don't know
it's
what
a
that
big
is.
hoopla. It's like,
well, again, I mean, you know, they're just we've become, again, a formula, and we've become, you know, the formula now is to not have a formula, but that really is the formula.
Right.
You know, it's something that because we're, you know, again, we're blaming corporate America, like, say, you know, when they want to go after Hillary, it's usually aligned with Wall Street. But the reason why we're so negative towards Wall Street is because we see such disrespect from the corporate side of things. And if the corporations, again, they spend so much money and they do such bad work with it, that if they were to show that they were about community, that they were about artistic ideas, and they, again, use that as an organic platform to have people say, I liked Scion because they did this, or I liked, you know, so that, again, all you're trying to do is put that card into someone's head to, like, when they're looking for a car, like, oh, I'll go to the Scion lot. Like, they don't know if they want it, you know, and that's the same thing with any corporate sponsorship. So if they were to change their ideas and their agendas so that people didn't feel so negative towards it, because there really isn't, you know, it's a tough argument for me to sit there and disrespect corporate America because that's how we all work. You know what I mean? So, like, it's like, it's easy to sit there and be that skateboarder and point fingers and be like, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, and then pump gas into my car. Like, the hypocritical side of it is like.
No, but I get your point. I mean, there's all this lost opportunity, right? The money's being spent anyway. The brain power and the heart is being spent anyway. Like, you might as well do something that actually matters.
Meaningful.
Absolutely. And, you know, and that doesn't need to cost extra. That's just people accepting a different point of view.
Again, I think it's going to come down to, like, new generation agencies and new generation talent that are going to bring new ideas to the table. And they're going to start very small and grassroots, and they're going to be like, they're going to get one little, you know, promo for, you know, distributing potato chips on a beach or something, but they're going to do it in a way that's so respected and liked that people will sit there and give back and also, again, show respect. Because like it's a really hard argument to me, because again, I hate corporate America, but then I realize that we all, you know, rely on it every day. So you know, if it's something that again, they have the wherewithal to do this, you know, and a lot of it is just fear, because they're afraid of like alienating someone, or
and they've just you know, there's 150 years into doing things
their way and stuff, you know.
Now. I mean, I'm almost curious to see what would happen if, I mean, in theory, everything would change. You know, the way we watch TV, the way we listen to things, the way, like I went to the Pitchfork Festival in New York, or in Chicago, and I was like, it's a bunch of kids that aren't like us, because it's different. It's like Coachella, but different. There's no ads everywhere. There's no beer garden with Bud Light all over it. It was very, you know, it was a very hipster festival, but it was all turned down a lot. And I was excited by that. Like I actually felt like I was at a party versus, you know, getting pitched a yellow wristband.
Which is how it used to be. 20 years ago.
Well, I mean, look at Coachella now. It's
every
like,
festival was like that 20 years ago, right?
Yeah,
and
now it's different.
I mean, even, you know, you get to Coachella and, you know, the surrounding 400 homes are all, you know, there's a Volkswagen house, and there's a, you know, a Maxim house, and there's a Coca-Cola house, and it's like they have nothing to do with Coachella at all, but
spending a couple $100,000 on the activation.
Yeah, but I would love to see them say like, oh, it's the, you know, the Coca-Cola house, and I look over and I go, wait, they're building a house, and then I look into it and I'm like, oh, we're building this for, you know, abused mothers or something like that. I'm like, so they took all that money, you know, blew off the parties, you know, you know, Z-Trip ain't spinning, you know what I mean? But it benefited, and then all of a sudden there's a buzz because they're like, did you see what Coke's doing? Nothing. They're building a house for, you know, and I think that they can.
Amazing.
They'll break. Someone's going to break that, and someone's going to look. It's going to be good business for them at some point, and they're going to be like, "Let's do it. It's a great campaign. We're getting it, you know, great results out of it." But the amount spent is unbelievable, or the amount wasted. And again, it's advertising. It's, you know, print ads that come up, go down. Could you do something that's a little bit further with it? And
absolutely.
And I think that would be a great, you know, place to be with it.
Nice. Well, hey, they're gonna kick us out of here. My last question, I need to know, favorite DJ?
Favorite DJ?
Yeah.
Jeez, I don't know. Like, who would be my favorite DJ?
Lethal.
Lethal, yeah.
Okay.
No, I mean, for sure, you know, Lee's always been a good guy. I'm not a big, I mean, unless you're talking EDM, geez, man.
Can be whatever you
I don't
want.
really even listen to EDM at all, so it was funny to work in that whole side of it. But yeah, I mean, favorite DJ, I mean, for sure, let's go with Lior.
Love it. That's a new one for the show. Great, man. Dude, it's such good.
Hey, thanks for having me on. That was like really
it.
fun, and, you know, try not to get too serious on everyone, and, you know, on
I love
radio
it,
land and stuff like that.
How do people find you online?
My name, michaeldelahaut.com. You can go to my website. You can see my work.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, just it's hard to spell, and but you'll find it. And yeah, I mean, that's basically the best way to find my work. Or just you know, turn on the TV.
For sure. Absolutely.
It's that garbage. It's that garbage you're like jumping over every time.
That's your work. And I definitely encourage everybody to check out Delta Bravo. Do we know the handle?
Delta Bravo, you know, you can find it through Facebook. There's a Twitter account. We don't have an actual page, so we're just on all the social platforms. But, I mean, if you just look up The Outsider's House, it's going to take you right to it every time, too.
Okay, cool.
And anything with Danny Boy, again, like, it's been a blessing to have a person, you know, of his stature, because, again, it helps to get any kind of information out there when you have a platform quite like his.
For sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right on.
Cool.
Well, thanks, man.
Thank you.
Love talking to you. Appreciate it. Eddie, thanks for being here, man.
Thank you.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
All right, that was Wise, a.k.a. Mike Delahaut. I hope you enjoyed that. Make sure you leave us a comment if you did on Twitter at Rebel Radio Net, on iTunes, Facebook, or send me a postcard. Most importantly, come back next week. We got Jennifer Kushel recorded live in Los Angeles for your listening pleasure. Peace.